with Joe Gansas.
And now your host, Joe Gansas.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Around the Kits video live stream show. Today, August 14th, 2022. I'm your host, Joe Gansas, and for the next 2 hours, we'll be talking drums, and if that's not enough, drum some more. Guys, we have a tremendous, fantastic show tonight that involves 4 of the best in the world of drumming. We have a roundtable in a little while that will consist of 3 tremendous drummers, Casey Grillo, Jason Gianni, and Brian Dunne. Our main guest tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, a living legend and truly one of the greatest drummers to ever hold 2 sticks in his hand, the tremendous Dennis Chambers. And when I mention Dennis's name, and I always got to keep it real, we always talk about, oh, who's your favorite, who's the best? It's all nonsense, but we're allowed our opinions. He's in my top 3, Weckl, Chambers, and Simon Phillips. That's just me, so he's very special to me. Always loved his connection and loyalty to what he does. He's just a master of the drums. If you've seen him years ago with Parliament Funkadelic and everything in between, he played with Tower of Power for a little while. He played with Santana, a great band called Niacin that I hope to talk about today with him, with the great Billy Sheehan. Just love Dennis Chambers, huge fan, and just a monster player. He's played with everybody in the business, and went to see him a couple of years ago. Me and my producer John Bessa, and he did a great job with the Buddy Rich Band in Manhattan. I think he played what song did he play? He played Dancing Men. Yeah, great job by him. So we got a chance to meet him and take some pictures. Very warm, and we're trying to get him on a guest. We had him on my show a couple years back on his tribute show. He spent 2 hours with me on the radio, but we've never got to interview him, me and him one-on-one, and I'm looking forward to it. I hope everything goes good. I just have so much to ask him and get back to his days, almost 50 years in the business, and we'll talk about that. Hopefully, we'll get to that growing up, but just looking forward to Dennis Chambers so much. Just a master player. He's the kind of guy that just plays in the pocket, for an hour, and then his speed around those toms is just, it's actually beautiful to watch how he just explodes at times. And I think he started this new trend, if I'm being honest. I look at guys like Tony Royster Jr., who maybe try to emulate stuff from him and a lot of this gospel drumming stuff now. So I think it's a great thing what he did, to start this stuff. But just looking forward to Dennis. So we hope we have a great interview. I got a great roundtable coming up with 3 great guys. They've opened on the show, so we're going to get into them, have a cool topic to discuss with them. If we can, let's get to our calendar before I forget, because we have some tremendous shows coming up in the next couple of weeks. Next week, August 21st, another living legend. It's great to have back-to-back living legends, and they're actually good friends with each other. Steve Smith will be on our show next week. Just pumped for Steve. Had him on the radio twice, but never on this platform, so just pumped for him. In 2 weeks, Mickey Curry and Troy Lucetta on the 28th of August. So we got some great shows coming up, and we've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, getting our sponsor video and doing interviews on the side. So we got a lot of content coming up. Just added a brand new guy. Wanted to welcome him today on the air, Patrick Fraze, as our new social media guy, and he is pumped up. I wanted a guy for the show, myself and John wanted a guy for the show that really loves the show, because you get somebody, I want to help the show with the social media, but this guy, Patrick Fraze, he really loves the show. We got him. We got a great team now. We got guys like Brian Duke as our segment editor. Of course, the great John Besser as a producer director, and our 2 segment writers, Doug Miola and Laura Pepialtieri. Just a great team, and it always has to be a team. It's never about Joe Gansas. Yes, you see my name, as I always say, but it's and I really mean that. It's a team of all of us together. So we're just trying to get these shows out there. We got some great guests coming up. But today we get to talk to the great Dennis Chambers, and I'm like a little kid today because huge fan of his. Never got the chance to talk to him, so we hope to dwell into a lot of things. So we got a great round table, a great interview with Dennis Chambers, I hope, coming up in a little while. But if we can now, take a little time to hear from our main sponsor, Senten Cymbal. Around the Kit is sponsored by Senten Cymbals. Senten Cymbals is quickly becoming the choice for drummers worldwide. With their roots going back to the emperors of the Qing dynasty, Senten blends the best of old world know-how with modern techniques to help all drummers find the best fit for them. Whether you're an avid drumming enthusiast or touring professional, Senten has the perfect combination of products, pricing, and service to fit any drummer's needs. Contact them today to find out what the drum love is really all about. Senten Cymbals. Forge your sound. Hey guys, we are back with the round table, and tonight we are in for a big treat. Of course, Dennis Chambers in a little while, but 3 world-class drummers who have all been guests in the past, and I appreciate their time. Casey Grillo, Jason Gianni, and Brian Dunne. Guys, what's going on today?
Hey guys, good to see everyone.
How you guys doing?
Great. What's up, Brian?
What's up?
Everything is good. Everything is good.
Except for the cars going by him. Everything's good.
No, that's great. I appreciate your time. You guys are so busy on tour, educating, clinics and school, teaching. But I wanted to bring up a topic today, and I really am so glad that we have you. All 3 of you guys have something in common. You're drummers, but you've all played or currently playing in a project or a band where you weren't the original drummer. And that's just that. Casey Grillo in Queensryche, Brian Dunne with Daryl's House and on tour with Daryl Hall, and Jason Gianni, over the years, Rock of Ages on Broadway, teaching, and to back up the great Mark Martel doing Queen. So you've all been in that situation where you weren't the original drummer. My question for today's roundtable, and we'll start with Casey Grillo. How do you maintain that, Casey? How do you maintain the vulnerability of the originality of the songs, but let them know that Casey's playing the songs now?
Oh, yeah. So I just have to go over the songs a lot, all the time, because if I start bleeding too much of me in there, it doesn't sound like Queensryche anymore. So I have to, constantly listen to the original tracks and try not to let too much of me come in there, to play too much of myself. So it's kind of a trick. It's a little bit tricky for me because I never was that kind of guy. I always played like me and nobody else. So it was a little bit hard at first to get used to doing that, but I'm getting better at it as I go.
Do you actually find yourself and take a song like Silent Lucidity or a song like In Force where there's certain parts and you're actually saying, oh, I want to do something, but I can't or shouldn't?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. But yeah, I try, and I do it in sound checks, and Eddie will look back at me going, what are you doing, man? That's not the right part,
Eddie Jackson, great bass player.
Yeah, he's amazing. But I'll go over I'll play over the bar or something just to mess with everybody, and they're like, just don't do that when we play live. I go, no, don't worry, because it'll totally mess them up. They're not used to it.
Or like a really fast double bass beat in like Silent Lucidity, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Usually I'll break a cowbell out or something.
And you know, that's my no kidding. That is my wedding song. I don't know if Casey knew that.
Oh, is it? I
Wow,
didn't know.
Yeah,
cool.
but I would love a version of that with a blast beat in it. So I can show my wife.
I'll make one up. It'll be funny as hell.
Cool,
Yeah.
guys. We are in this great roundtable with 3 world-class drummers, and I thank them for the time. Jason, Gianni, let's get to you, man. Just killing it. You killed it at the Delaware Drum Show. You've always
Thank you,
given
man.
me the honesty, and I love everything about you. You know that we talk a lot. Rock of Ages, whether it's on Broadway, whether it's in Carteret, New Jersey, and everything you've done in your career, especially backing up the great Mark Martel several years back. What do you do, brother? Is it the same as Casey or different, where you're comfortable playing those classic Queen songs or all the songs from Rock of Ages? How do you maintain the consistency of the originality at times?
Well, I think it very, very much depends on the gig, of course. You know, that's really what it comes down to. And especially lately with my experience with more Broadway stuff, I'm getting to the point now where I am aiming to play a show exactly the same every time. Now, unfortunately, fortunately, that has to do with like, you know, the original drummer and who you're trying to sort of like dedicate your performance to make sure that they stay to the exact part. But it takes out of the idea of creativity, you know, and that's the tough thing is balancing out what's best for the music or the show and what's best for the creativity. So really what it comes down to is really sort of casing the situation, dealing with the musicians you're playing with and saying, you know, what is the window of opportunity here? Is it a really small window where I have to really pick every part out and play exact, like a Broadway situation? Actually, here's another situation: is I had to sub for Mike Portnoy with the Neil Morris Band, and I had to really play exactly what he played. And like Casey said, I had to run over these parts 8 billion times, you know, to make sure that I remember everything, you know. And then there are other aspects of it of like being with the Queen thing where I can be a little bit more myself. So really, for me, it comes down to the gig at the end of the day.
Yeah. Brian Dunne. Guys, if you haven't checked out Brian, he was my guest a couple back months ago. He does a great job at Daryl's house and on Daryl Hall, and he's been doing it for a while now. Brian, thank you for your time, brother. The same question for you, man. You got to play like Sarah Smile or Man Eater from Hall & Oates, and you got to do all these. You did a great job with Tommy Shaw, Renegade. Is it important for you at that time to be a drummer or become a fan also?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. And, you know, I second everything the other guys said. I mean, it's all, you have to find, you find that you walk that line of playing the gig and putting some of your own flavor in there. Fortunately for me, with this kind of, with Daryl's music, it's kind of R&B based, and there is the fills and things, they're not, from the drummer's perspective, they're not, it's not as part oriented as some other stuff. So, and plus Daryl is a free spirit, so he never tells anybody really what to do. So if it's within reason, we all have freedom to kind of do what we want. The main pocket, of course, has to be the correct feel, but there's very few moments where you have to play a specific thing on the drum chair anyway. So I feel fortunate.
Yes, like you did a great job as always with Tommy Shaw. Big fan of him when he came to Daryl's house, and you did Renegade. It's in my top 10 favorite songs of all time. I like what you did there. You didn't keep it like the original Drum and Sticks or even Todd. You made it your own. So I like when you do that.
Yeah, I mean, usually I've been like these guys. I've been a sort of a gun for hire my whole life, and I've always been a chameleon first. And with Daryl's house, there's very little, there's no rehearsal actually. And, he specifically doesn't want us to do too much homework. So, I, of course, went right to the original recording of Renegade, and then of course checked out what Todd is doing, because I wanted to give the artist a bit of a comfort zone, to give him sort of close to what he's used to. But because Daryl wants us to not do what's literally on recordings,
okay, good.
yeah, we have freedom that way, so it's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good point too. And first of all, let me say, Brian, awesome job with the Hall & Oates stuff and Daryl's House stuff. It's so great,
Thanks, man.
really awesome.
Really great.
But I think a really good point is like I think it also depends on where you're coming into the gig too. Like, are you the original? Like, obviously we're talking about not being the original, but are you the next one, or are you like 20 years later?
Good
And then
point.
you got to start looking back at like what happened recently in live performances. Should I be listening to the most recent live stuff and taking it, what's going on right there? Or should I
Right.
go back to like 85 and listen to it, or the original? So it's very, very, leveled like that.
Yeah, and like in Casey Grillo's perspective, Scott Rockenfield was before him, so 95% of what they do live was the Scott stuff. Casey, do you find yourself at times, I know you want to keep that originality, but are you also a fan at the same time? Like, like I asked Brian, does that come into a play where you have to just keep your composure and you have a job to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been a fan for years, so it was one of those things. I wanted to keep it like the original, and I did actually go back and look and watch the Scots playing when right before me. I got lucky, and there was a whole video of him playing live, and so I just kind of copied everything he was doing live to try to keep the guys comfortable with that situation, as I was coming in. I only had 8 days to do it, so I didn't copy as much as I wanted to, but yeah.
Now, how about being in a band? I think 7 years now, and you're still just a great job. Now you have a little more freedom, or you're still not yet.
Well, I just did the last record, so
Yeah.
they allowed me to do what I wanted to within reason. Obviously, I didn't play any blast beats, but not on the ballads anyway.
Not on top of the city. What's wrong with you?
So, but yeah, they were like, hey, do we make him play like the old drums, or do we let him do what he naturally would do? And that's kind of what I did, was naturally, but trying to keep it sound the same as like a Queensryche bill.
Yes. And I'll get to Brian and Jason, and I thank you guys. Brian, have you had a situation where you might even you've taken a chance and it didn't work, or it worked, and you found out right there that maybe it's just better to play the original?
I mean, I again, like, there's not the vocabulary that I use for whatever I'm playing. I'm just kind of going with the genre. So I never really stray far from what would normally be there anyway. So there hasn't been, there has not been a moment, at least with my days with Hall & Oates, where anybody's turned around and said, nah, you can't do that. But it's probably more due to me not going, just kind of reminding myself to just play the gig I'm on, not the one I might be thinking I want, that I want to get off somehow. So I just stick with the song. The song is king. That's all.
Yeah. Now I know it's a job. It's a paying job, and you're there to do a job. Is it a place you like to be in that place?
Oh, I love it. I mean, I grew up. My brothers both drummers, and since we were kids, we would just look at guys like Steve Jordan on the Letterman Show, or Steve Gadd, like the guys that were playing lots of different kinds of music that introduced us to all these other musicians. That I kind of come from that. I mean, I come from rock and roll first and foremost, because I grew up listening to Ronnie Montrose records and Bad Company. Like, that's really my first roots. But yeah, we kind of grew up in a household where, like, we wanted to be like Steve Jordan, So that's kind of where I'm at still.
Not a bad place to be. Let's Jason Gianni. He'll take us to the end. Any closing comments? Because you just I want to touch with you real fast with the Queen stuff, and how you took that to your own level, or you kept it the same.
That's kind of a long, sort of drawn out story, because there was Mark came from a band called the Queen Extravaganza.
Yeah.
And when we originally started the project, which is the Ultimate Queen Celebration, we started working from the Queen Extravaganza stuff. So, and that was put on by Roger Taylor, and Roger started to do different arrangements for them.
Mhm.
So we were kind of taking these sort of different arrangement things, and then over the course of like the next year or two, we started to sort of straighten it out and go back to what Queen was doing.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's like when you spend a long time with a band, you guys all know that like it kind of becomes its own show in a way. It becomes either your thing or the show's thing, or that kind of thing. And sometimes it can get away from you too. And there were definitely some times where the music director got away from all of us, and even me, and he's like, that's not what I want. That's we got to kind of go back to the foundational thing. So you just got to sort of always keep your hands on the cart and make sure you're not straying too much. Brian makes a really good point in making sure that you don't get off of the genre. If you're doing R&B stuff and you're not using a lot of like a Motown fill or something like that, you're going, well, then that's just not a right musical choice. You know what I mean? So a lot of it's about musical choices too.
Yeah, but I think we should change that today. If we're doing R&B, Brian, you got to throw some double bass in there. And if you're doing metal, Casey. Yeah, right. Well, guys, listen. Brian, what do you got coming up? Where can everybody check you out?
I'm on the road now with Daryl Hall and Todd Rundgren, and we're getting to
Nice.
double dip. So I'm playing Todd's set, and I'm
Oof.
playing Daryl's solo.
Nice.
So that's
See?
cool.
Oh,
Beautiful.
and
We're doing a run in November. I don't know where yet, but
cool. And Casey, what's up with Queensrÿche right now?
We release a record in October 7th, and we follow that by a Judas Priest tour. So all in the U.S.
I think it's the 16th Queensrÿche album, my favorite band of all time. Jason, what do you got upcoming, brother?
Lots of different fly dates coming up with Mark Wood, violinist from Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Rock of Ages, and Stratospherious, the band I'm working in right now, and I'm doing a lot of Broadway right now, and I'm using this stuff on R&B gigs too, so it'll be fantastic.
Great stuff. Guys, another tremendous roundtable, and I appreciate Brian's dedication to dodge traffic. It's awesome.
Is it raining really hard there, Brian?
it's raining really hard right now.
Well, guys, Brian Dunne, Casey Grillo, Jason, Gianni, you always give me everything, and I thank you, and I owe you so much. Thank you for another great roundtable and making Around the Kit better. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, have a great
See you
night.
guys.
Okay,
All right.
guys. Good night.
Thank you.
All
See you
right.
guys.
Oh, guys, what an awesome roundtable today. Oh, man. Oh, I got to tell you, one of my favorite roundtables in a while. So once again, we say, it's still raining. Once again, we say thank you to Casey Grillo, Brian Dunne, and Jason Gianni.
All right, we are back once again with another amazing night of all things drummers, drums, and drumming. Hello, everyone. This is Doug Miola with our new Around the Kit Spotlight Drummer series. Tonight's Spotlight drummer is Pat Torpey. Pat was born in Painesville, Ohio on December 13th, 1953. As a young boy, Pat saw a drummer performing in a polka band at a picnic that he attended, and that's where his pursuit of becoming a drummer began. In high school, Pat immersed himself in all available music programs: concert band, orchestra, marching band, and stage bands. In an interview, Pat once said of his early days as a drummer, "I wanted to play everything percussion, and I convinced my mother to buy me a used drum kit for my 13th birthday." Pat and his family moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where he began to hone his skills by playing in various local bands. In 1983, Pat moved to Los Angeles and began networking to further his drumming career. Pat became a regular on the American Bandstand and Solid Gold TV shows, performing with artists like Benny King, Mike and the Mechanics, Melissa Manchester, and Bob Geldof. In 1985, Pat successfully auditioned for the British pop rock singer John Parr, who at the time had a #1 hit single with St. Elmo's Fire, and had attained the opening slot for Tina Turner on her Private Dancer tour. When that tour ended, Pat became the drummer for Belinda Carlisle on her first solo tour, opening for Robert Palmer. In 1987, Pat met Bobby Colomby from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and he asked Pat if he was available to do some studio work. Columbia was producing a couple of tracks for the band The Knack, and their original drummer had just left the band. Pat loved The Knack's music, and the band ultimately offered him the drummer spot for the band. While on tour with The Knack, Pat was noticed by bassist Billy Sheehan and guitarist Paul Gilbert, who were looking for a drummer for a new project. Their project would ultimately become the band Mr. Big. Mr. Big secured a recording contract with Atlantic Records, but before the band started to work on their first CD, Pat was tapped to play drums with Robert Plant on his Now and Zen tour when Robert Plant's drummer Chris Blackwell was injured. Mr. Big was initially successful in Japan, but achieved international stardom with the 1991 release of their second studio album, Lean Into It. This album featured the acoustic ballad To Be With You, which received strong play on radio stations and MTV, rising to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. For 14 years, Mr. Big toured the world, headlining as well as opening for Aerosmith, Rush, Bryan Adams, The Scorpions, and many others, garnering a reputation for their musicianship and live performances. When not working with Mr. Big, Pat stayed busy with other projects. In 2002, Pat played for the reformed version of Montrose, and in 2004, he toured with guitarist Richie Kotzen as the drummer for his UK and South American club tours, as well as with Billy Sheehan on Johnny Highland's first self-titled album, Johnny Highland. Pat returned to play with the Knack in the same year, and at the end of 2006, he joined the Exile Social Club, a band that relived old rock and roll hits and included bassist Chuck Wright from Quiet Riot, guitarist Jason Hook, and singer David Victor. Pat released 2 instructional videos, Big Drums, performing several of Mr. Big's songs with Billy Sheehan, and the second, Rock Groove Drumming, in which he demonstrated his approach to using rudiments in his playing, dynamics, heel-toe technique, and triplets and double strokes with both feet. Both of Pat's instructional videos provided insight into how he approached his drum parts on his Mr. Big tracks. On July 25, 2014, Pat announced that he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and would be unable to perform all of his normal drumming duties on Mr. Big's 2014 World Tour in support of their album, The Stories We Could Tell. In an interview, Pat said, "I intend to fight this disease with the same intensity and tenacity that I drum and live my life by, and I will continue recording and performing as always to the best of my ability." Pat acted as drum producer on Mr. Big's latest album, Defying Gravity, also contributing drums and percussion to some tracks on the record, and playing percussion on tour, although Matt Starr had mostly taken over lead drummer duties for the band at that point. Sadly, Pat died from complications of Parkinson's disease at the age of 64 on February 7, 2018. Pat was a fierce and dedicated drummer who worked hard and had a stellar career. His presence in the drumming community is dearly missed. Rest in peace, Pat. Thank you for sharing your incredible talents with us. We miss you.
Hey guys, we are back. It gives me great pleasure to welcome back to Around the Kit the tremendous, the living legend, Dennis Chambers. Dennis, Joe Gantz on Around the Kit. How are you, brother?
I'm doing fine, man. I'm doing fine. I'm back at home, and really good. It really feels good to be back here.
Yeah, man. It's first of all, thank you for your time. If you remember, I know you're so busy. You were on the tribute show for you. Do you remember? You came on and you were talking to all the guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a great
yeah.
time, and I wanted to thank you. But thank you for today. It's so great to have you. I want to paint a picture, if I can, go back in time. Um, Born in '59 in Baltimore, and I don't want to say easy because I don't think that's appropriate. I want to say maybe drumming came quickly to you at the age of 4. Playing in these clubs at 6, and talk to me about growing up in Baltimore and the early days and that whole thought process.
Well, first of all, it was a beautiful, beautiful, very beautiful thing or experience. Growing up in Baltimore, during that time with music, just music was just all around, all kind of great stuff, to listen to. I mean, and plus, I came through, when the '70s was a great experimental
Yeah.
period where everybody was experimenting with music, like case in point, like, Jimi Hendrix on the rock side. Jimi Hendrix was, gathering up his musicians. That was the '60s, that is. But they were gathering up jazz musicians. Like the drummer was a jazz drummer, and the bass player was a guitar player. Excuse me.
Mhm.
But yet they got together and became one of the greatest rock bands. Cream was another. You had a blues guy, and then the other two guys were jazz guys, and they became one of the greatest rock bands of that era.
Mhm.
And then with Motown experiences, and then the James Brown experiences, Stax experiences, and the Aretha Franklins, and then like all the rock groups that came out, Grand Funk Railroad, Mata Hoopa. I mean, it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
No matter what style of music you got into, it was honest. And what I mean by that, honest, it was just, when guys were writing things, they were writing from what they felt. They were writing things that was going on around them at that time. Um, Not where, today's music is more like cookie cutting.
Absolutely.
It's like, you get somebody who's got a hit, and then, if they have 2 hits, then everybody follow that lead. Where in the '70s, it wasn't like that. It was more or less record companies were more into, finding somebody new, the new sound, the new style, where now here it is 2022, pretty much everybody just copy whatever that's a hit. You got Beyonce, then you got other people trying to follow that,
Yeah.
you got the boy groups, then everybody followed that. Um, but it wasn't like that in the '60s and the '70s. So for me, um, growing up in Baltimore, we had like all these great, beautiful musicians, local musicians that I had a chance to, follow, and learn. I mean, because I'm a self-taught musician, I didn't go to any school to learn how to play, so my learning experiences was right on the job, like right on the gig,
Sure.
and whatever whatever I was going through physically, playing the music, that was one thing, but like visually, just watching my other compadres, learning from them, learning how to hold the stick, and learning rudiments, and learning how to play music first
Yeah.
of all. And that's the thing needs to be addressed today. It's just that I feel, and I hate to sound like my grandparents, but it's like I feel that like everybody is too much into me, and they forgot about us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're on the
Yeah.
bandstand, and every time you go, you check out like YouTube or something like that. and you check out the new guy, or some guy that who's supposed to be hot on the scene, and you click on it, and all you hear is a solo.
Right.
Well, there's other things than the solo. The most important thing is the music.
Yeah, musicality.
And
Yeah.
and if you get brainwashed into that, because every time you go to YouTube and you see somebody play a solo, they're not teaching you, their musical capabilities. There's other things than just soloing. The soloing is just the icing on the cake. But you got to remember, there's a cake first.
Is it important for you to have that cake and make sure everybody in the band gets the right piece at the right time?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the cake is the cake. It's like, you know, another example. Cake, or the metaphor of cakes or houses.
Right.
I always say, like, in order to um, um, play some music, you have to have a great foundation, meaning a great rhythm section, or whatever rhythm section that you have. It's got to be a good or great one, for you to shine, or for you to be the best that you can be at the time that you're playing. I mean, when I sit down and play drums, I've always said that I wanted to be the best that I can be at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, when I walk into a studio, or when I walk on stage, my best is sitting there and listening to what's going on in that room or on that stage, in order for me to be the best that I can be, as far as, like, if I need to groove that thing hard, or if I need to, be the most technical thing on the stage at that time. Meaning that if I got to play like all these weird time signatures and all these weird, accents and breaks and stuff like that, I got to be the best at that, at that time, the best that I can be at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just being honest, just when you walk on the bandstand, being honest with your ears open, and be giving, be a team player, to say that, okay, well, you got to toss away your egos, and whatever somebody told you they think you are, or who you are, and all that bullcrap, that don't matter to me.
Yeah. I think it's, and I love the word honesty, especially in drumming in life. I think it's, it can be honest with your bandmates, but it's so honest for you as a drummer and artist to be honest within, because if you're not honest within, how can you convey it, forward?
Well, yeah, that's what I meant by, you got to be honest with
Sure.
yourself. Be
Yeah.
honest with yourself. First of all, you got to start with yourself in order to be honest with everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just great stuff. I like to bring up your mother, Audrey. I think she was your really first mentor, in a way, if I may, because she was a backup Motown singer herself, and you used to watch her in your grandparents' yard. Talk to me about that and her role early on, as you credit her as your musicality you got from her.
Yeah, I mean, growing up at mom's house or mom's apartments, um, watching and not understanding, actually watching her go through what she was going through with the local bands that she had,
Right.
but not understanding that, like, she was, since, they called her Little Audrey back in them days.
Mm-hmm.
And not understanding that Little Audrey had, she was like a local celebrity, so to speak, with the musicians. And because of her experiences, her short experience with Motown, you know.
Yeah.
But growing up in that house, it's like, I mean, my mother always had some music playing, all kind of stuff. I mean, there was always like soul music, R&B music, and then soul became, you got into funk when James Brown came along.
Yeah.
We had all of that, and then there was all this jazz, Art Blakey and Miles and Coltrane, and so for me, I figured it to be a musician, you had to study all those styles of music. Then later I found out that, the guys wanted to be separate, like the jazz guys didn't like the funk guys, and the funk guys didn't like the rock guys. The rock guys didn't like nobody but rock, and everybody was like in their own little separate container. But for me, it's like I grew up listening to all of that stuff, and I learned to appreciate it and learn to love it. And that's why I mentioned, groups like, back in the days like Mata Hoopa,
Sure. Yeah.
Grand Funk. See, a lot of people don't know that I listened to all of that stuff. I listened to like a lot of rock music. I listen to everything.
Yeah.
Classical music. I listen to that. The only thing I didn't listen to much at that time was country music. I couldn't. I think I was allergic to it. There was
You're
something.
allergic to country music.
I think I was at that time.
At that time.
You know, with the what do you call that? The steel guitar. You know, I'm like, man, shoot me now. But country music has came a long way
Sure.
since then,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I seem to enjoy it better these days than those days.
Yeah.
And it was great music. It was great music back then. It's just that I just wasn't feeling it. That's all.
Yeah. So early on in that house, whether you even know it then or now, that was sort of your earliest education, if you will. You were listening to all these things, not because maybe you had a choice, but it was around you. So that was an early education, for you early on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, growing up listening, like I said, listening to all of that stuff and then
Yeah.
study. I mean, really studying it, like we're to the point where, you start to hear and feel different every time. Like, for instance, like if you put on like the Delphonics,
Mhm.
you know the Delphonics, right?
Sure. No. Yeah.
I mean, you heard their music. Are you
Oh,
familiar
yeah.
with the music?
Yeah.
Well, okay, when you listen to like Did Not Blow Your Mind This Time, or what's the name of that? Well, they had a few hits, but anyway, if you listen to any of that music, the drummer was so far back behind the beat. The left hand was. It was so far back behind the beat. It kind of made me feel like, hey, man, it didn't sound like a James Brown. It didn't feel like a James Brown type of vibe,
Yeah.
or it didn't feel like Aretha Franklin or Diane Washington or Dee Dee Warwick or anything like that.
Yeah.
Although Dee Dee Warwick was a little close to it, but I mean, the drummer, by him with that left hand being back behind the beat, it made the feels feel like this. I mean, bigger than a room instead of like playing on the beat. Like nobody used metro. In fact, metronomes weren't even invented back then during those times. So, but instead of it, if you were your own metronome, things moving like this, and you be trying to stay with it, sometimes it sounds a little stiff. But if you put that backbeat, behind the beat a little bit, things widen up a bit.
Mhm.
Like and then and like in Elvin Jones' case, where he's playing triplets, but the triplets are so loose, and that's where it's almost the same feel. When he's loose, it's like as Carlos Santana would say, the groove feel like it was elastic feeling.
Okay.
And I like that word that he used. It was very elastic.
Uh-huh.
But the Dolphonics, since it was 2 and 4 backbeats, um, the backbeats were there. It was still 2 and 4, but it was just how he implied them. And they were very accurate. They weren't like, it was like, one was a little ahead, one was a little too far back, one
Mhm.
was so far back. No, it was like you can you can set your watch on those backbeats, and it was so far behind. But like I said, listening to that, studying that, and studying, like James Gatson, where with those funk grooves, man, with the 16ths on the hi hat. I mean, that was a great learning experience listening to that and studying all of that. And then the James Brown stuff, and
Yeah.
then Power. It was a very beautiful time period for me to learn how to play music.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then, like then you had somebody like the Mahavishnu came along, and that just blew my freaking mind off. And I got a chance to see them. I saw the original band twice, I think, and I saw the band with Nada once, and both bands were just unbelievable. Mahavishnu with Billy was just a little bit more raw, I believe. It was. It felt like. It felt like somebody threw a piece of meat in a lion's cage with four lions, and they were fighting over that. That was the vibe. It felt like but I mean and I think that was the rawness of it. With the energy. Man, I still got that. I can still see it in my brain right now, and I can still hear it. With the I mean that music and that band had such a effect on me where I couldn't sleep for like 48 hours after I heard it. And the same thing with Tommy Lee and Python. Same vibe.
How about Romantic Warrior, an album?
Yeah, another great one.
Yeah, yeah.
With
That's
Lenny,
Lenny White.
Lenny,
Jeez.
all the stuff that all the Return to Forever music
Ugh,
is just unbelievable.
yeah,
But
yeah,
Lenny was very special in the roles of the role
yeah,
of being a musician in that band more than people know.
yeah,
And I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to talk about it. That's something you may have to talk with him.
yeah.
He had a great amount of things to do with that record, Romantic Warrior, as I found out.
Yeah, yeah.
He wasn't just he wasn't just a drummer in that band.
He's been on the show twice. Matter of fact, he's on next month. We are talking to the tremendous Dennis Chambers. I thank him for his time today. A special time. 13 years old. You already mentioned James Brown. At 13 years old, you were actually asked to join James Brown. But once again, the mentor, almost your manager, your mother, she steps in and says no because they wouldn't pay for your tutoring. And you were
Yeah.
quoted by saying, thank God I didn't play with him. He probably would have ruined my life.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was another time period where James was more into, he was a strong advocate, on education.
Hmm.
He would have this saying called "Don't be a fool, stay in school," which I thought was weird later, since I was asked to join the band, he wouldn't offer a tutor,
Right, right.
knowing that I had to go to school, but he wouldn't offer a tutor, and which made me hate school, because I was getting a lot of, well, not a lot, I was getting a few offers to do things while I was in school. I had a union card when I was in high school, maybe in no, I wasn't in elementary, maybe junior high school. In high school, I had a union card. And that's how I was able to play with people like David Ruffin, Eddie Kendricks, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. I was able to play with them, because I knew the music when it came through town. They would pick up bands, and the musicians had to be in the union. So I was in the union, but the thing with me was I knew that music, whereas like they just couldn't pick up a drummer that was classical trained to try to play that stuff. And back in them days in the union, they had a lot of those kind of guys. They were all classical, big band, guys that the union would look after. They got more work than anybody. But however, when special units come by, like those guys I mentioned, they need somebody that really know it.
Mhm.
You know.
What kind of player were you in the house shredding and learning? Talk to me about your own personal growth, even the first 15 years before we get any further. What was your routine? How dedicated were you to drumming early on?
I was a nut, man.
Yeah,
I mean, you never caught me without a pair of sticks, and if you did, I was mentally practicing.
sure, sure.
Because I had a lot of catching up to do. Because all around me at that time, I had these phenomenal drum heroes. They were phenomenal. I mean, they again, we're talking about like James Gadson, Harvey Mason,
Mm-hmm.
uh, all the James Brown guys, the Al Jackson from the Stax recordings, Paul Humphreys, um, Hal Blaine, all those guys, man, and there were no clicks. See, and
Sure.
so for me, it taught me that I have to, develop um, time, a beat, or be a metronome, so to speak, before the metronome. Yeah, actually, not before the metronome, but I have to be a metronome in the rhythm section
Mm-hmm.
because back then, everybody pretty much relied on the drummer for time anyway. That all fell apart, so to speak, when the metronome became uh, audible, where you can put it in everybody's ears, and now everybody in the band or the rhythm section wants to play to the click. So therefore, if everybody do that, what happens is the magic sometimes in the grease of the music gets lost, and that's what made that music what it was in the '60s, '70s, and '80s. It was the magic. It was the grease.
Yeah.
Nobody wasn't trying to be perfect, perfect, perfect to a machine. And a lot of people don't. Well, some people, I should say, some people don't know how to play with a click.
Mm-hmm.
I look at how to play with a click. I use a click like a percussionist. The only difference is, um, it don't follow me. I follow it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
where some people they just can't play to the click because um, they look at it like they don't look at it like it's another instrument in the band. Um, and wherever they want to go and wherever they want to take it, they listen to themselves instead of just listening to
Right.
the overall picture. That's what's in the room, which is the click and the rhythm section. You got to follow the click, but you also got to play with the rhythm section. So
Yeah. You mentioned how
so
today. Go ahead.
for me, it's like with those guys that I mentioned, they were like unbelievable, just on the strength of that, and then being creative with all of that while all of that's going down.
Yeah.
And with the musicians following them, it made it work. It worked. And I mean, like if you listen to any of that stuff from the '60s and '70s, and if you had to put digitize that stuff and put that stuff in Pro Tools, you'll find out none of that stuff was perfect.
Right.
But nobody cared about perfect. They just felt they cared about a vibe.
Yes. I if you listen to some early Zeppelin albums and Black Sabbath, you will hear mistakes. You'll hear Bonham make a mistake. You'll hear Bill Ward make a mistake. I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful because it's music.
Yeah,
It's real.
it was real and it was being honest though.
Honest, right. Sure.
That's what honesty comes in. It was just being honest. Like
Yeah.
it was a mistake. Okay, so what? It wasn't a train wreck, and if it wasn't a train wreck, it's just showing everybody like, hey man, like they're human too.
Right.
Your heroes are human. Everybody make mistakes.
Right. Now these days we can go and you could do that once in a song. Go have a beer. No problem. I'll put it in 5 parts of the song for you. Copy and paste.
Yeah,
So you
copy
don't
and
have to.
paste, yeah.
It's to me. It's disgusting at times. I really because it's not. You're only fooling yourself. I feel as a musician.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It just
Well,
yeah.
nowadays is with recordings, you can go in and like I said, you can copy and cut and paste and all that stuff, and you can go back and overdub and punch in and all that stuff. And then once everybody finalize what they're comfortable with or what they like, well then now the musician got to go back if he's going to tour on that music, then he's got to go back and learn exactly what he did on those records.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where that's another thing too. In the '60s and '70s and '80s, we weren't into like locking the music down. When you play live, that you have to play exactly like the record. Like now, you got all these cover bands that are out there. And like the cover bands don't realize that when you went to see Prince or when you went to see Earth, Wind and Fire night after night, it wasn't the same night after night.
Sure.
You know,
That's the way it should be.
um,
Yeah.
it wasn't the same. When I played all the groups that I played in, Parliament Funkadelic, Steely Dan, Santana, um, John McLaughlin, yeah, I mean whoever I played with,
Tower
it
Power.
wasn't the same. Yeah, it wasn't the same every night. We played the same music every night, but it wasn't played the same every night.
Why would
And
you
and
want it to
and
be?
most of
Why
the
would
time,
you want it? Yeah.
but see, that's what they do now, though.
Oh yeah.
You go see whoever's like the big dog out there. You go
Right.
see them. You go see them one night. You saw the whole tour. It's going to be the same every night.
We have backing tracks. We have all these backing
Yeah.
tracks. It's so sad at times, but when it's about the almighty dollar at times. But it's sad. I think, if I may, was there an early game changing moment for you? An 18-year-old playing a jazz club one night, then 5 days later playing Madison Square Garden with Parliament Funkadelic. Talk about these times.
Very interesting. Like you said, like you mentioned, up until the point I played with Funkadelic or toured with him, I was playing in a lot of lot of jazz clubs, a lot of R&B and soul clubs, playing around town with the locals. And then all of a sudden, I got a call from Rodney Ski Curtis, who's a friend of mine that played bass. I grew up with. He's like a brother to me. We were in a few bands here in Baltimore. He left to join Funkadelic, and the whole time he was there, he was plotting, trying to get me in the band. And then one day it happened. But when I joined, I was with the Brides of Funkenstein. I was a part of the tour.
Right.
Brides of Funkenstein used to open for Parliament Funkadelic. And then, like the next year after joining, I ended up setting in, being one of the guys that would play, some parts of the show. And then it ended up with me just playing the whole show. George and everybody in the band felt that I was the guy to do the whole show. Plus, I wasn't on any drugs or anything like that, so I was able to function through a whole 3 hour show. So he
Yeah.
stuck me on that. But the experience was, like playing in a jazz club where it's like it could be like six to 100 people to like the 30,000 to 40,000 people and more. It kind of blew me away. I remember my first week, I used to get goosebumps, because I couldn't hear myself count off. With Funkadelic, we were headliners, and I remember when the before the lights come down, my drum tech would come and get me from the dressing room, make sure I had everything I need when I walk up on stage. And then the lights drop on stage, and you can hear,
Sure.
and then all of a sudden, when the audience see flashlights on stage, they're trying to get the musicians in their places. The sound gets a little bit more intense. So he gets me behind the drums, and he puts sticks in my hand, and he goes like, "You ready?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I got everything." And then the lights come up, and then all of a sudden you can't even hear nothing. I mean, you just hear, you know. And when I count off, the band couldn't hear me because they all they heard, they were more closer to the screams than I was. I was like in the back, dead center, where the guys that was on the front line,
Yeah.
they hear just the audience. So it was so loud I couldn't hear myself count off. So then I learned how I have to like count off with the sticks. I mean, yell the count and also click the sticks together so they know. But it took me a week to get over that. I mean, I would look down, I would see these goosebumps on my arms, man. I was like, man, we're in it. We're definitely in it.
Yes. Even back then, even today, if Dennis Chambers plays Birdland or you play Madison Square Garden, are we getting the same drummer, or do you have to be different drummers in different venues for you?
I have to be, yeah, I have to be different drummers in different venues. not only for the venue but also for the music.
Hmm. Sure.
You know, where like if you see me play with John McLaughlin, it's balls to the walls. You know, when you see me play with like if you see me playing behind a singer, it's not balls to the walls because it's not that kind of music. You know, I'm still going to be the best that I can be playing that music, but it's not as intense because the music is not it don't lend itself to go that way. So I have to be different. You know, I have to I have to play behind a singer, which is not a lot of flash and a lot of energy, but it's still about the music.
Yeah. 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 Uh, I I'm a big Billy Sheehan fan. I love the guy. I love everything about him. Any chance we ever revisit Niacin, or is it wishful thinking?
No, it's not wishful thinking. There's a plan for a tour next year
Ooh.
with Niacin, but it's only going to be in Europe right
Oh
now.
man, take me with you.
Right now,
Take me with you.
but I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure there's going to be a tour in the States if we were to do that.
I'll be your tech. You don't gotta pay me nothing. I'll just stand there and watch you guys.
Yeah,
Uh, that's
yeah. I was
great
listening to
stuff.
that music.
Uh,
Yeah, I was listening to that while I revisit that music on this 2 tours ago. Man, I was thinking I may have to go do some jogging before I
yeah,
play that music.
that's
Go do
intense,
some
man.
running the track.
Uh, and you were quoted once. We talked on your tribute show that not so much Billy, but the rock guys didn't get it right away.
Um, no. Well, I mean, like I said, everybody, pretty much the rock guys, were pretty much into just listening to rock.
Hmm.
And everybody in those categories were into listening to whatever they were listening to.
Right.
They didn't do too much listening to like if you're a rock guy, you didn't listen to a lot of jazz, or you didn't listen to a lot of funk. Um, except for some of the music like Led Zeppelin, they listen to like John Bonham, for instance, he listened to a lot of uh, R&B and funk
Mm-hmm.
music,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So and that's what made him, who he was. I mean, when he did Fool in the Rains or
Yeah.
Pull in the Rains, I
Yeah.
can't
Fool in the
remember
rain.
the title.
Fool in the rain.
When you listen, yeah, when you listen to that, it's you hear Bernard Purdy.
Yes. And I believe the beginning for rock and roll is a song called "You Come a Knockin'." Ba, 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 ba,
Yeah,
ba, 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 ba.
yeah.
And so it's even stated that is that who is that by Little Richard. So I
Little
think
Richard.
he took that from Little Richard. So you know, like, like you just said.
Yeah, well, a lot of I had this videotape, and I try to tell people, other musicians, you gotta. It's great that when you do research
Oh sure.
on music, when you go back and dig through history, you learn a lot of stuff. You learn a lot of stuff that um, that or in other words, the British invasion. That whole thing was just that stuff was in your backyard the whole freaking time. But the reason why you couldn't deal with it because you had it was this ignorance of color skin.
Right. Sure.
The Beatles, the very first Beatles records, it had Little Richard influences all over it.
Oh, they loved
We
it.
love you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo, that's Little Richard.
Sure.
You know, but this getting back to this videotape I had or have somewhere. It was either called The History of Music or The History of Rock. But the good thing about this video is it's like an interview video, and the video is the guys who are talking is the guys who invented the music. You're not getting like a interviewer, talking about, well, so and so said. No, you're getting the say from the guy who
Sure.
lived it, who the guy was there.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
when you listen to like like the Beatles, there's a part where the Beatles is talking, and everybody that was part of that British invasion when they came over, they were asked who are their influences, and they named, like all these black artists.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like with the Beatles before they left London, the guy who did the interview was at the airport, and he asked them, like, you're about to go and touch down on America's soil. What's the first thing you want to do? And they said the first thing they wanted to do was meet Little Richard. They want to meet Fats Domino. They want to meet Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
And there was somebody else they wanted to. Muhammad Ali, and they wanted to go to Graceland. That was the last thing they said. Well, over here, all you heard was they wanted to go to Graceland.
Right.
They didn't, because they didn't want thanks to the ignorance of colored skin,
Sure.
they didn't want the white audience or the white followers or the white fans to hear that,
Right.
your heroes, from Britain, love black music.
Right. Sure.
And, like for instance, like Pat Boone, like Jesus Christ, Pat Boone's career was built on the back of Little Richard. Little Richard put out a song, before the month was over, or before 2 months is over, but he covered it. And back in them days, radio stations was pretty much, it was AM, it wasn't FM then.
Right.
So it wasn't that much, it wasn't anything on AM, FM. It was just a bunch of white noise. And so therefore, you got your music, from the AM stations, and the AM stations, there were a couple of black stations in Baltimore, that is. Now, I'm not talking about where you live,
right?
But in Baltimore, there were a couple of black stations, and then it was the white stations. Well, the white audience didn't listen to black music. The black audience would listen to, like black music, but every now and then you go over and listen to, some of the stuff that was coming off the white stations.
Right.
Okay, so now thanks to that, because of the ignorance of color and skin, then you had crap like when Pat Boone put out a song, and the thing went like it sold more than Little Richard could ever sold, as far as his music.
Yeah.
And so therefore you got the Pat Boone fan, they come back over and they listen to, or they may have heard, some version of that same song, but it's different. And they like it, but since they found out it was a black artist, they don't want to listen to it. And then they say, well, why is Little Richard copying Pat Boone? The ignorance, it was this ignorance. And it was just, it's like everything else that came out of that whole thing, the British invasion. You had it right in your backyard the whole time. But and like I said, that videotape, it talked about a lot of that, where nowadays, I'm quite sure you heard the story about, James Brown and Mick Jagger, like when they first met, and how that all went down, and like Jagger and those guys had to lock themselves into a dressing room for about 40 minutes or more, waiting for the stage to cool down because they had to follow James Brown.
Right.
And when Mick, that's how Mick Jagger learned how to like move.
Sure, you can see
because back in them days when you saw earlier footage of the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger just stood there and played a tambourine and sang. He didn't move that much. Well, he didn't move at all. He just moved his head and stuff, but that was it. But when he saw James Brown and saw those moves that he did, he figured he better do something. So that night, or that if you see the video footage of that night when they first met, or when they first, their first meetings, when he did that kick, and it was very unorthodox, Little Richard, that is. He did jump up and kick, and the audience like went nuts. You could see the look on his face, like, oh my God, they like that, and,
right.
And he talked about it. He was like, man, they liked it, and he think he better do more. So then he learned to move. It's okay to move. That stuff was in your backyard the whole time.
Right.
But because of this,
right, the ignorance,
man,
yeah.
And it goes to everything else. It goes through history about not only just music, just history of everything, religion, all that stuff, man. It's so mind-boggling. But you'll never know if you don't like sit there with and use the multimedia to dig through all this stuff. The stuff is there. It's right in your face. All you got to do is click on it.
if I may just go off track for a second, my father was born in Alphabet City in New York City, 1933. Grew up blacks, whites, Irish, everything,
Yeah,
Polish. Great, great. He went into the service and he couldn't have lunch with the blacks. My father was like,
yeah.
he was blown away. He was like, "What?" And it made him sick. They had to have different buses. Oh, but you could fight with your country, but you can't eat together. It's sad.
You can't even go to the bathroom.
Right, right. Different bathrooms. And it drove him crazy
I,
because his best friends were of color.
yeah. I mean, I was a little kid, man. I remember going to the store with my grandmother, where we had to take back in them days. There were electric cars.
Hmm.
There were buses that were like they were electric buses.
Right.
Everybody had, every city had the like the line or the
Sure.
um, the cables in the streets. No matter what street you want, it was sort of pretty much like San Francisco
Yes.
with electric cars. Well, every city had buses like that. So I remember. Well, we had to get on the bus, and my grandmother had to give up her. And she's sitting in the back now, but she had to give up her seat because this old white lady, wanted it, and she had no place to sit.
Wow.
And I remember asking my grandmother, like, what was that about? She goes, "Hush, child. Yeah, I'll explain to you later." She never
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
They pretty much kind of figured it out, after going downtown, where you see, water fountains. You had your white water fountain and your black water fountains. You had your white bathrooms and your black bathrooms. And what I mean, like poor, yeah, I mean, a little innocent me at that time, like trying to figure out, when I came into this world, I didn't know anything about that. I was taught it, just like everybody, whether they, if they got any hatred in them, they were taught how to hate.
It's taught. I always say that. Like I'll ask somebody, "Oh, I don't like black people." Well, why not? Because my uncle taught me. My uncle told me. See, he was taught. He doesn't even know probably what racism really is or bigotry. But his grandparents told him black people are no good, white people are no good. Oh, okay. So yeah, we're definitely taught a creature of habit in life.
Yeah.
It's
But that's, that was, that's all, like just learning about life.
yeah,
And
sure, yeah,
it's crazy that you had to go through that, but nevertheless, that's what we had to go through.
yeah, absolutely.
And it is what it is. But
Yeah.
now, when you start seeing stuff like, place in Texas, they want to teach elementary kids, about the slavery, and they want to give it a different name, and they wanted, people to learn or they just want to disregard slavery, like that never happened
Right.
in Texas. Teach
Yeah.
to
It's
class
crazy.
of elementary kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what is that going to fix? All you're doing is teaching them how to lie again.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But anyway, I
We
didn't mean to get off on any
no
of that. But
good. We're just going with the legend, and I love calling you a legend because you are that, a living legend, Dennis Chambers. Sugar Hill Records, doing a lot of rap recordings. What did you take away from this experience? And it was something you really enjoyed.
I really enjoy, being with those nuts. It was a group of nuts. It was like organized chaos,
Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
speak. Being with Sugar Hill Records, where you were in the studio where you could be in it with Funky Four or Grandmaster Flash
Sure.
or Sugar Hill themselves or the Sequence group. I mean, whoever that was part of that label, you had a chance to, cut some music with or for.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I didn't learn that much from it because basically my role was just to duplicate what was already done. For instance, like I remember Grandmaster himself would come in and he would just say, since Grandmaster he was the DJ in the band, so therefore he would come in with these records and say, "Hey guys, learn this." And at that time, the band members was Doug Wimbish, the bass player for Living Color.
Living Color, yeah.
He was in that band. Skip, I forgot Skip's last name, but he great guitarist. They had a great rhythm section. Great band there. It was the Police's horn section, which was Daryl Dixon,
Hmm.
Steve Dixon, Daryl. I forgot Daryl's last name. It wasn't Daryl. Dave. I'm sorry. I forgot Dave's last name. But they were the Police's horn section.
Okay.
So you had this killing band that was sitting there, like just listening to rappers come in and say, "Hey, man, learn this from a record." Like, well, that's already been played. That's already been done. No, well, we want you to learn this, but we're gonna figure out what the new groove is gonna be later.
Right, right.
And then you go through all of that, and then they put the thing out and they get sued because they claim they wrote it. It's just them learning the business. Where I'm sitting there, I'm coming out. I just came out of Funkadelic. Well, still with Funkadelic at that
Right,
time,
right.
knowing that you just can't like just copy somebody's music and put it out there, and you don't get like clearance and like learn about the publishing and all that stuff.
Right, right.
They didn't know, so they put the thing out, and then like for instance, like Rappers Delight was it was Chic, Good Times. Do 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 boop 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 boop
Yeah,
boop. That's Good Times.
sure.
Well, City Hill did it, and they put it out, and like I think about 2 years later, they got sued for
Ugh,
big, big money.
yeah.
But that was them learning, learning about the business, So
Yeah.
meanwhile, I'm sitting there, I'm trying to tell them you can't do that, and I think the band, Doug and those guys were trying to tell them you can't do that. But when you got a mega machine that you're dealing with, and you can't talk to them, then they have to learn on their own.
Right. You have worked with some of the best in the business in your career, but if I can be honest, I think the best thing that has worked for Dennis Chambers is letting you be you and not letting others, musicians, control your process and creativity.
Yeah, but that's like everybody else. Miles Davis became Miles Davis because nobody had to tell him to be Miles Davis. Nobody had to tell Coltrane to be Coltrane. Nobody told Elvin he had to be Elvin. Nobody, all those guys,
Hmm.
like, they work best by, them just plowing through it, plowing through some things and experiment as they go along.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean there were times I remember somebody said, well, like for a certain track, I had to play like Steve Gadd,
Hmm.
but that didn't happen often though. Whereas, like when you play in a local band, well, then you're locked down to playing those parts, and you got to play exactly like somebody, which is it's a crime for the musicians to do that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You don't read music, you don't write out anything, yet you have this ability to create brilliant phrases and rhythms. Where do you go, Dennis Chambers, internally for this form of artistic interpretation?
Man, it's just like anything else. I mean, when I mean, for me, it's like I studied a lot of records, and whenever whoever came through town, I was always there.
Hmm.
Like in the crowd, just lurking, just listening to like what these guys do and how they did it. Um, but the phrasing and stuff like that, is pretty much like just again just listening to like all the guys who were great at it. Like Billy Cobham was great at phrasing and everything else. Tony Williams was great at phrasing and everything else. Harvey Mason was great at phrasing. Um, Derek Gabaldi is great at phrasing. Steve Gadd is great at phrasing and everything else. All those drummers were great at phrasing and everything else. Diamond, man. Diamond Williams from the Ohio players. That dude, if you ever listen to some of those records, it's genius. And if you listen to those records, then you can understand Michael Bland, the drummer for Prince, because he's a very unique player himself. And when you listen to his phrasing, and I'm not saying that Michael Bland copied Diamond, but it's funny that those two styles are familiar, or
Mhm.
they're familiar to each other. Um, and I'm not sure if I asked Mike if he listened to Diamond, but I'm quite sure he did. But Diamond, man, Diamond was a beast. It still is a beast when it comes to, like, just playing a funk groove, and all of a sudden you hear the wildest drum fills, and it's like when you listen to Diamond play drum fills, it's like you took a cat, and you drop them from whatever feet. You can drop them from your shoulder up, or your head up, or like a story high or 3 stories high. You take him by his legs and you drop him. He lands on his feet. Diamond was like that.
Mm.
If you listen to Sweet Sticky Things, some of the drum fills, it's it's so weird.
Yeah.
And I still listen to some of those records just to listen to the fills. And then once I figure out the sticking, of what they were, then I'm like, okay, right. Well, I just can't just copy it. How do I make this my own? And then I went into, playing that same music, but just playing. I knew the concept of, where it was going to happen, but I took the same concept and just did something totally crazy with it. Not crazy where it stuck out like a sore thumb,
Mhm.
where somebody would say, if they listen to it, they go like, why did he do that? That was, it was too much. It wasn't like that. It was just a very tasteful, weird feel that kind of resembled what was there, but not quite what was, not quite like it.
Mhm. Dennis, I got a couple more, and I can't thank you for this very intimate time. It's just great to have you on the show. If I can, what is, if there is one, what's the biggest misconception about Dennis Chambers?
Well, there's a few far as I know. Where I remember somebody said, uh, which was kind of surprising. I remember this guy I used to see around town, here in Baltimore, and I remember he was sitting he came to hear me play once, which was very odd because at the time he was going around listening to, and he would go around to all the drum clinics, but they were all the white guys drum clinics. So I never thought I would see him at one of mine because I'm not white, but nevertheless he came and he made a statement to somebody that was sitting at the table that he didn't know that they knew me. They were great friends with me. In fact, one of the guys sitting at the table was my brother, and he said, I don't know why anybody would pay to see Dennis Chambers because he plays the same way no matter what you put in front of him. So when I heard that he had said that, I'm sitting there thinking like, I was analyzing what he was saying. I'm trying to figure out what does he mean. I mean, because when you hear me play with Steely Dan, it's totally different than me playing with the Brecker Brothers. When you hear me play with the Brecker Brothers, it's totally different than you hear me play with P Funk. When you hear P Funk, it's totally different than when you hear me play with when I did that Jackson tour in the '80s. And then all the bands that I played with, like John Scofield, John McLaughlin, different. Mike Stern,
Sure.
it's all different. So I asked him. Well, he came upstairs and he dropped to his knees, and I pulled him up and I'm like, hey, I don't know why you dropping to your knees because I heard according to you, I played the same. So what do you mean by that? And he tried to backpedal. But then I found out that, I mean, no matter what you do in life, man, everybody's just not going to be happy with you. They're going to find something to
Uh,
hate you for.
I was,
They're going to find something to ridicule you about. And that's why I've always said I really didn't give a crap about, the only thing I care about is just being the best that I can be, and also being the best, giving my all to the project, no matter what it is, to give them what they want when they need what they need.
mhm.
Other than that, like what people say, and all that, it don't matter. But going back to the question, that's what that is. It's just that I've heard some things, um, like it's always different when you're inside looking out than you outside looking in. So I try to, go outside of myself and think about everything that I've done. Like would somebody say that?
Right. We 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 talked earlier about musicality and playing for the band. Here's a question for you. It's you and another drummer, anybody, and a certain artist wants you guys to put some sort of drum to a piece of music, and you really love this music, you love it, and you play your heart out, but the guy chooses the other guy. Are you okay with that?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it because no matter I'm Dennis Chambers, no matter
Right.
what happens, I'm going to be gigging. As long as I wake up with some kind of health or whatever, I'm cool with it.
Right. But it
And
doesn't.
not only that, like everybody, um, everybody's not, or you may not be great for that project.
Right. Right.
Therefore, they got to pick the best guy for the project.
Sure. Sure.
Now the music that they're playing, maybe the drummer, the other drummer, was better at it. Then I go with that.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Cool. Cool. Uh, Talked about health. You had a scare 8 years ago in Stockholm. You became ill on tour with Mike Stern and Bill Evans, and Mike found you on the floor laying in your own blood. It's documented. You were in a coma for 4 or 5 days. Most of us don't get a second chance in life. I believe you have. What are you doing differently now after the illness to keep life a steady beat?
Well, first of all, I remember thinking after going through all of that, my first gig, I was so freaking happy that I was alive and experiencing it. And not only that, I found a new love for music, or playing music, because there was a period as I was going through what I was
Yeah.
going through, coming back from Spain. I honestly didn't think I was going to play drums again. I had no desire, no will to play drums or music. Period. Pearl sent me up a big fiberglass kit, a yellow fiberglass kit, just to keep me, motivated. But I would set the kit up, and then every now and then I would go back there and make sure the drums were tuned in pitch and all that stuff, and also I was experimenting with the shells and drum heads. So I had Evans to send me over, a lot of drum heads for me to figure out what sounds great on a fiberglass shell. But I would never sit there and play or practice the drums. And then I would call people up to have them to come over and play so I can hear what the drums sound like, from in front of it, not from behind it. And see if that would motivate me to play. That didn't even motivate me to play. So for years and change, I didn't play drums. I didn't
Right.
even touch it. And then Mike Stern offered me the gig down at Blues Alley here in DC. And I went down there and played. Now, funny thing was that place was packed for those 3 days. Then I found out the reason why it was packed because a lot of the drummers, the word got out that I was doing the gig, and I didn't practice, or I didn't, I just didn't do any warm ups or anything like that. So
Right.
they came to see what I would do in a situation like that.
Or watch you fail. You were
Yeah,
quoted. They wanted to see you fail.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but yeah, that's they
Yeah.
did. They gave us spells.
They
I found out.
they wanted to see you fail. It's crazy. Let's go watch
Not all.
yeah, but
Yeah, not all, but the majority of them came to see me fail because I saw faces in that place I ain't never seen before,
right,
or
sure.
not at any one of my functions. I see them at other people's functions.
Yeah. I think that's jealousy. In my opinion, I'm just but it's just sad. Um, I got one more question, Dennis, and I can't thank you for this. Um, Last question: are the drums always your friend?
Yep, yep. Yes, it is.
They
Yep.
they never
I mean,
lied
it's,
to you. They never lied to
no,
you. Good.
no. The only lie to me is when I lie to myself.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, it, but that all goes back to me. Just being honest and try to, uh, just try to pull off some of the greatest feel or fill
Yeah.
or some kind of crazy theatric drum part that I have to play. Like if I don't know if you heard this album called Petite Blonde by Bill Evans.
No.
Yeah, you may want to check that one out.
Yeah.
But it's a live record with Bill Evans with Victor Bailey, Chuck Loeb, and Mitch Foreman, I believe, was on that tour. There's a live record where I heard, a lot of drummers at Berkeley, at that time when they were going to Berkeley, they would cut their teeth on that record. And I went back and listened to it. Once I found that out, I went back and listened to it. Like, wow, that is a great record.
Mhm.
It is a great record. A lot of craziness, as far as grooving on my part on that thing.
We were blessed today, Dennis, to once again have you on the show. We we've been trying to get this. You're so busy. What do we got coming up? Where can everybody check you out?
Oh, let me see. The next thing I have to do, I have to go back to San Francisco to play with Fade Carroll and Joe Warner at Yoshi's. I believe that start on the 6th through the 12th. I think it is. I know it's on the 6th. It starts on the 6th at Yoshi's.
Hmm.
Um, I got to do that, and then I'm going to be doing some tours, European tours with Osnoy, with
Nice.
Jimmy Haslett, and also some tours with Mike Stern. And that one's going to be either Randy Brecker or Bob Franceschini. I don't know who's going to be playing horn on that tour,
Nice.
and I don't know who the bass player is. Maybe hopefully it's Tom Kennedy or
Patitucci.
Edmund.
Or
No,
Patitucci.
Edmund. He's good.
Tom Kent.
Well,
Oh,
with
yeah.
him too, but he's got here lately. There's two guys. There's Tamar Fells and Edmund. I forgot Edmund's last name, but they're two great musicians that are from Israel. Man, those guys are unbelievable bass players. So a
Kennedy.
lot of great musicians. Osno is from that area, and
Yeah.
he's phenomenal.
I love Kennedy. He's just a monster. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
he's a great player.
Yeah,
Dennis,
but so is Tamar and
yeah,
Edmund.
yeah.
They're two underrated, unbelievable bass players.
Yeah.
Or Gary Granger. He may use Gary Granger on the tour. I'm not sure. He used Gary Granger on the this European tour in May with Bill Evans. It was Bill Evans, Mike Stern, with Gary Granger and myself, and that was phenomenal.
Mhm.
That was a great tour.
Well, we will continue to follow you, brother. I can't thank you again for this time. It was a pleasure, and we will definitely talk to you down the road. Hopefully, do this again maybe next year if you have some time. But we say thank you from all of us at Around the Kid for once again, Dennis, making our show better.
No problem. Don't go nowhere. I want to show you something.
Yeah, please, Johnny.
Take you down to the laboratory.
Okay.
Let's see. We won't fall down here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah. God. Oof. Damn. Most I can say is wow. Beautiful.
So up here, this is my. I wish I had my iPad at this point. I could turn the camera around, but I can't. But this right here, this is the Tony Williams snare drum that goes to my Tony Williams kit.
Oh, God.
This one, that's a Max Roach kit that I have. That's the snare drum to that. And there's various pieces. I got couple of Buddy Rich snare drums. I got one Gene Krupa snare drum in here. I got Art Blakey's kit in here.
Oof.
Then there's some over here too. But I got a closet full that I haven't pulled out yet.
Oh, God.
But yeah, this is the laboratory where
I'll come down and kick a few.
And just hang out. Oh my God.
Yep.
Love it, Dennis. We wow, just a beautiful stuff. I can't thank you enough, brother. Just thank you for inviting us today into your house and to show us this. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's all my guitars, all my basses. I got a bass collection that won't quit, man. You know, some Larry Graham, some Skeet Curtis. I got 3 Stanley Clarks. I got one of Jocko's. I got one of Victor Wooten's. I got one of everybody's stuff. John McLaughlin guitar.
Nice.
Santana's. Yeah, it's a little museum down there.
Oh, beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff, man. We'll definitely talk you down the road. Just thank you once again. It was just a pleasure having you on today.
Thank you.
All right, man. Dennis, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
All right now. Bye-bye.
Ciao. All right.
Bye.
Oof. Guys, the brilliant player, living legend. We say thank you once again to Dennis Chambers. This month in drumming history, we acknowledge the extraordinary accomplishments of session drummer Andy Newmark. On August 7th, 1980, John Lennon began recording his final album, Double Fantasy, at the Hit Factory in New York City. It will be released on November 17th by the newly formed Geffen Records, days before his murder. It went on to win the 1982 Grammy Award for Album of the Year, and Andy Newmark was the chosen drummer on that album. Andy was born Andrew Newmark on July 14, 1950 in Port Chester, New York, and was raised in Mamaroneck. His mother was Bermudian, and his father, Charles W. Newmark, of Russian Jewish descent, was an assistant DA in New York City under Thomas E. Dewey. Andy took up the drums at 9, and by 15, he was getting paid to play. At 16, he moved to Bermuda, a place he always considered his second home. He joined Bermuda Jam, a band that included guitarist Paul Muggleton. At 21, Andy landed one of his first major gigs, recording with Carly Simon on her albums Anticipation and No Secrets. These and other sessions, along with a recommendation by his friend, saxophonist Pat Rizzo, led him to becoming a member of Sly and the Family Stone. He performed with the band for 2 years in concert and recorded the album Fresh. After leaving Family Stone in 1974, Newmark played drums for the first month of George Harrison and Robbie Shanker's 1974 North American tour and returned to session work, playing drums on Gary Wright's 1975 album Dreamweaver. He continued performing on Carly Simon solo albums throughout the 1970s and again in the 1990s. Newmark's discography reads like a musician's fantasy dream team with John Lennon, Cat Stevens, Joe Walsh, B.B. King, Eric Clapton, David Bowie, Roy Buchanan, Brian Ferry, Dan Fogelberg, George Harrison, Ricky Lee Jones, Patrick Moraz, Randy Newman, Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Murray Heed, Keith Richards, Rod Stewart, Luther Vandross, Ronnie Wood, Roxy Music, ABC, Hue and Cry, Laurie Nairo, Nicolette Larson, Elkie Brooks, Sting, Steve Winwood, Niles Lofgren, George Benson, and Michael Franks. In addition to Double Fantasy, Andy played on Milk and Honey and was a featured drummer on Yoko Ono's Seasons of Glass. Not many drummers can say they laid the beat down behind not one, but two Beatles. Behind the funk, soul, and psychedelica of Sly and the Family Stone. Behind the art, glam, pop, and prog rock of Roxy Music and Pink Floyd, and behind the beautifully warm, toned love songs with loud, heartfelt messages of Carly Simon. Bravo to Andy Newmark, whose career is still going strong for over 50 years. Thank you for bringing drum excellence to so many of the songs that are part of the soundtrack of our lives. Hey guys, if you like what you just saw and you want to see more, click that link below to subscribe to our channel, and especially the notification bell to be updated on future shows. Thanks, guys.